everyone, Mel here from Sewing with Mel. And if you'll remember, I did a video a while back about embroidered slippers, and I used my friend Jamie's perfect slipper pattern. Here's another one. Okay, so today what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a tutorial on how you can import the actual pattern pieces into your machine, and using Design Center, you can quilt with the different designs that are in your machine right onto the pattern pieces. That way you don't have to quilt an entire piece of fabric and then cut your pieces out of it. It's just a different way to do it. So I thought it was really cool. You're able to bring the pattern piece in, put the quilting on top of it, move it around to where you'd like it to be, make it bigger, make it smaller. It's a good lesson in Design Center, and you get to make some cool slippers. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to scan in the pattern piece that we're going to work on first. Now I already have it on my scanning board with my magnets, and we're going to do this piece first. Okay, so let's go ahead and put it in the machine. Go ahead and load the scanning mat, lock it down. All right. You're going to want to go to My Design Center. Got to press it a little harder than that. Okay. We need to do a scan, and we're going to scan these. So let's go up here to our scan button, and we're going to do a line design scan. So let's hit that, and let's go ahead and scan it. It's recognizing. Okay, now my whole thing that I scanned is showing up on the screen. Let's zoom in on the screen so you can get a better view of what we're about to do. Since we're going to just do this piece first, let's get rid of everything else. So what you're going to do is these two arrows here, we will move this, and it doesn't want to do it. Sometimes it works better there with my finger. I want to do it with my finger. And I just want to go around. I want this red box to just go around the piece that I want at this moment. And it's not, see how it's not quite in right there? Bring it out. There. All right. Now we need to figure out, because of your lighting, your grayscale detection could be different than mine. So let's go ahead and hit OK. It's right in the middle, and let's see what happens. Okay, it's pretty good. Let's see what happens if we go a little bit lighter. I like that a little bit better. Let's try even lighter. That looks really good to me, except for that, but we're going to erase all of that. So really, I just want this outside line. That is the cutting line for my piece. So let's hit set. Now you can see how you can still see in the background the image that I scanned. Come on up here and let's put it at the lowest setting, which will make it disappear. And it's not working. It's really hard for me to push it from the side. It works better if I do it straight on. Okay, now we want to get rid of all the letters. We want to get rid of the magnet pieces. So we're going to use our eraser. But let's make this bigger so that we can see what we're doing. Let's make it 400. That looks pretty good. All right. Let's erase. choose your eraser, and you can choose the size. Now remember, whatever size you choose on your eraser, the more you zoom this in, the bigger your eraser gets. Okay, so it's on size 20 right now, and it is a round shape. I want it to be a square shape. And let's erase. See, gone. I'm going to erase this. Don't erase any of your lines. You can draw them back in if that happens, okay? I want to move this up, so I'm going to hit the hand, and then I can just take my stylus and move it up, move it over. Let's go way over here. Let's erase all of this. Once you change to something else, you have to go back and hit it again. You have to go back and select it. So let's erase this. Okay, let's erase. Whatever we can see is what I'm going to erase. Okay, hand. I'm going to drag my screen up and over and get rid of some more stuff. Choose the eraser again. Erase all that. Erase all this. Choose the hand. Bring it on over. Erase. And erase. Now if I missed and I erased part of it that I didn't want to erase, you can always go back. There's an undo and a redo. Okay, so you could always go back and it will fill it back in, and then you can erase it better. Let's move this around. There's some here. Yep, let's get rid of this. Okay. A little more. And I do believe there's some over here. Right there. Let's get rid of that magnet. I could turn off my sound, couldn't I? Okay, let's make it smaller and see if we missed anything. Looks good. I don't see that I missed anything. All right, so what we want to do is we now have our pattern shape. We want to fill that with quilting so that we're just quilting the shape of the pattern and not a whole piece of fabric and then cutting the pattern out of the fabric. So in order to do that, this is a line scan that we did, okay? So this line right here will stitch out unless we tell it not to. Now I am going to tell it not to because I don't really necessarily need it to stitch around the cutting line. That's where you're going to cut. But if you want it to, so that you don't have to actually lay your pattern piece on or guess where it is, it'll work pretty good. But this is where you can say, I don't need that line stitched around the outside, or I do need it. Okay, so we're going to go up here to our line design properties. Right now, it would sew a satin stitch. We don't want it to do that. So I'm going to hit the properties. And right here, I can tell it how I want it to stitch out or if I don't want it to stitch out. And I don't want it to stitch out. So I'm going to hit that. We'll say OK. Now it's not going to automatically transfer to that. We have to tell it what we, now that we've told it what we want to do, how we want to stitch it, we have to tell this that we want it to not stitch. Okay, so I'm going to make it bigger because it's easier to see that way. Get the hand. There's my line. Go to the bucket, then touch the line. Now my line turned a gray so that I know that it has changed to no stitching. Okay, let's make it smaller again. Now we want to fill that with quilting stitches. So we're going to go to our fill here. Let's go to the properties. And right over here are our fills. So they're decorative fills, I should say. So let's click that and then hit select. You can choose from whatever happens to be in here. Okay, so what would I like to put on the toe of my slipper? I think I like, let's see, how about this? Then say okay. Now I'm going to pick a color just because it's red. I'm going to change it to purple because I like purple. Hit okay. Now we have to tell this that we want it to stitch that, because it isn't, just because you changed it doesn't mean it's going to apply. So now that we've got the color we want and the fill pattern that we want, we're going to hit the bucket. It's just slow today. And then we're going to touch inside. Very nice. Okay, so I want to explain something to you. You might say, well, it's off center and I want that flower part of it, the middle of it, to be in the center. It will be, because it will automatically center to the middle of that shape that you have drawn there, okay? So the way that you can see that is to hit next. There. Now you can see that the stitching, that little flower part, is right in the middle of the toe, which I really, really like, okay? So if we think about what size the top of our foot is, think about how big your fill is on that. Is it too tight? Is it too small? Should we make it bigger? I think that's a lot of stitching for a little toe. So I would like to make that bigger. So when you make something bigger, you're going to come right over here to this and make the size bigger. And I'm going to just hold it down. Let's put it at 165 and see what it looks like. Okay, there. Now I've got a flower and less stitching on my piece. Okay, so if I like that, I'm going to go ahead and hit set. And it's going to go into embroidery, and it will convert to an embroidery pattern. And you're going to exit Design Center. And yes, we do. We want to do that. All right, so there is my piece. All right. Now, you're probably wondering, how do I know that piece is the right size? Well, it scanned in at the right size. If I take my ruler and I measure that piece, and I know you can't see me measuring it, it is 5.5 inches tall. And what does this say? Almost 5.5 inches tall, 5.48. That is perfect. This is the right size for the pattern piece, for the toe, for the top of the slipper. All right, so this particular pattern piece is the same for both the right and the left slipper. So you do not have to flip it, okay? You're simply going to cut two, you're going to stitch out two, cut around it, and then you'll have two top pieces. All right, let's save that in our memory. And you can save it wherever you want to. I'm going to save it in my machine. So it is now in the pocket of my machine. All right, let's do the next pieces. We've got the side pieces to put quilting on. So let's go there. We still have the same piece on there. There is the sides of your slipper. Okay, piece B. All right, let's go ahead and let's do it again. Just scan the whole thing again. Let's go into my Design Center. Remember, we're going to scan, and then we're going to do another line design. So hit that, scan. And there it is. Okay, let's go back to the screen view so we can digitize this part. Okay, remember we want to get rid of this part now because we just want this. So let's use this. Bring it up here. Hope my arm's not in the way. And get it as close as you can. The less you have to erase, the easier it is. Let's move this one in a little too much. And down. That looks good. Okay, now only this part we're going to see. Remember our grayscale is right in the middle? I'm thinking it was better there. That looks good, actually. You just want to make sure that the line that you're using, the outline part where you would normally cut, is legible. Okay, so let's hit set. Let's get rid of this faint vision of scan we see right here. Right there. All right, let's make it bigger so we can see what we're doing. Use the hand. There we go. Drag it down so you can erase some stuff. Okay, let's get rid of all of this now. Eraser. And erase. It's kind of fun, erasing. Just don't erase stuff you need. Let's get rid of this. Okay, hand. Drag it over. Eraser. You always have to go back. Once you use that hand to drag it, you have to go back and select your eraser again. And let's drag it again. Eraser. Some little funny things in there. You just want the pattern piece because we're just using it for an outline. Let's get rid of that. And anything over here? I think that's it. Let's look at it at 100% again. Yep, I don't see anything out here. Looks pretty good. All right, now depending on your hoop or whatever, you could flip it now, you can flip it later. I'm just going to leave it like that, okay? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to tell it that we don't want it to stitch the outline, okay? So let's go into the properties of it and tell it no. Say okay. Now let's put the fill in it. There. Go to the decorative fills. Say select. And you can choose from a different one if you want to. I think since I chose this before, that I'm going to go with, I like these. Let's say okay. Now I'm going to make it purple too, just cause. Now remember, you have to tell it. Did I tell this? I didn't. So we need to go back in there and tell this line we don't want it to sew. It may be already going to do that because it says that up there, but let's double check it. Let's go to 1600 and the hand, and let's see what my line looks like. Nope, it would have sewn out because it's dark. See that? Bucket, touch the line. There. Now it's gray. It's got kind of a crosshatch in it. So that tells me that that's not going to stitch out. Now let's put it back and make sure. Yep, looks good. Now let's put this in here. Bucket, touch. Look at that. All right. That's a lot of stitching for that little piece. It's not bad though, but I think I would like it to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go to next. And then I'm going to go to this where it says the one at the top where it shows you that it makes the whole thing bigger. It makes each motif bigger is what it does. Let's make it just a little bigger. Come on. Try that. Let's try 135. There, I like that better. Okay. So now that I have the shape of the pattern piece and the stitching in it, I'm going to save that one also to memory. Now let's hit set. Converted to the embroidery pattern and my design center will be exited. Okay to continue? Yes. Now I'm not sure, when I saved it the first time, I don't think it was an embroidery design. It is now an embroidery design. So I'm going to hit memory again just because I want to save that. All right, so now I have those two pieces, which I will then go in, duplicate this, and flip it, because for each side you need two one way, or for both pairs of slippers you need two going one way and two going the other way. So I'm going to be cutting 4 of these that are quilted. Okay, so I need to make 4 of these. So if I go into embroidery now, there it is. But it's one side going one way. Now I want to stitch 4 out at once for both pairs, I'm making 2 slippers, 1 pair of slipper. I'm making 2 slippers, so I need 4 side pieces. Okay, so in order to do that, let's go back to embroidery edit, and let's put this one up here. Let's go into edit. We want to duplicate this. So let's hit the duplicate key. All right, there it is. It's exactly the same. Let's duplicate it again. It's exactly the same, and one more time. All right. And I want to kind of move them up a little bit. Actually, I'm going to flip them so we'll see. Now, we can't have 4 of the same. 2 of those have to be flipped. So let's flip these bottom 2. Let's flip this one. Flipped. Flipped. All right. Now we've got 2 going one way and 2 going the other way, which is exactly what we want. All right, let's move them up a little bit. Make sure that you don't overlap them. You want to be able to cut your pattern piece properly. That looks pretty good to me. Now I'm going back into embroidery, and there are my pieces. Now, if you want, if you know what the piece looks like and you're pretty good, when you get this all done, you can just cut it out right along where the lines stop, or you can cut out your pattern piece, lay it over the top, trace around it, and cut it off. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and embroider these pieces on my fabric for my slipper. All right, I'm ready to embroider. I have my fabric down. I've got my piece of foam underneath. I used a little bit of adhesive, a little bit of spray adhesive to stick it down. And I'm ready to embroider. Now, if you wanted to, you could also put a basting box around this. I'm not going to do it because I know that I've got my fabric secured. I'm not doing anything dense, so it's not going to pull, and I'm ready to embroider. All right, it's all embroidered. And now what I've done is, here it is I took my pattern piece and laid it over the quilting stitches, and it fits perfectly. I traced around it, and then I'm going to cut them out. And then I'll have my 4 outsides of my slipper all quilted. And here they are all cut out. One slipper, second slipper. Okay, now let's move on to the toe. Let's do the toe the same way. Let's move to the screen so we can pull it up. Okay, let's pull up our toe design, which we saved in our machine. There it is right there. We'll hit set. Now remember, we want to stitch out 2 of these, 1 for each slipper. So let's go into edit and duplicate it. There it is. Now we don't have to flip this, but what I am going to do is flip it so that this long line is up against this line. And you don't have to, but I'm going to. Come on. Here and here. Now I can move this right like that. So it's pretty close, because that is my cutting line. All right. Now, okay. Embroidery. And there we go. That is what I'm going to stitch out. So I'm going to get my hoop and I'm going to lay my piece of foam down on my stabilizer along with my fabric on top of it, and we're going to stitch this out. Okay, I am ready to stitch. Going into embroidery. I've got my fabric and my foam sprayed and in my hoop. Now, don't forget, if you don't want it to stop, because it's going to stitch one and then stop and then stitch the other one, let's make it stitch without stopping. It'll still cut what it needs to cut, but it will just continue. Okay, you don't have to stop and go to the next color because you're doing the same color, unless you're doing different colors. Okay, but this is what I'm going to do to make it stitch the whole thing. Okay, all embroidered, and I have traced my pattern pieces around it. So let's cut it out. I'm trying to cut far away from myself so I can get in the camera. All right, there's one. Now I'm just going to cut all around there. And I can see my line I traced. I just used a Sharpie because this is my cutting line. There we go. There's my pattern piece for my toe. Okay, I'm going to cut the other one out, and then I'm going to show you guys how to make the insole part completely in the hoop. All right, let's make our insole pieces. Now, this particular pattern piece is for the outside of your slipper, the bottom of your slipper, but there's an insert that goes on the inside of your slipper that slides in. And you want it to be, you would sew this together, turn it inside out, and top stitch around the top. Well, I'm going to show you how you can do a lot of that in the hoop. All right, so I want to point out that originally this pattern piece did not have this inner line on it. Okay, it only had the outer line. That's the cutting line. I needed to make a stitching line. So what I did was I took my marker and I drew in 1/4 inch all the way around. Okay, we're going to put this on our scanning board and we're going to scan it in just like we did the last pattern pieces. So let's put that there. Let's put on our magnets to hold it down. And I want to stick one right there. Okay. Now, when I scan, I take out my needle because I don't trust it. However, I have to remember I can't take the needle out with the board in there. There we go. All right. I just want to be safe. Okay, so let's go ahead, lock it in. Let's move to the screen so I can show you what we're about to do. All right, let's go to my design center again. And let's do a scan. We're going to do a line scan, just like we did. Line design and scan. We'll let it scan. I know you can't see that, but you know what it looks like. All right, there it is. Let's make it smaller. Now I want that inside line. I don't want that outside line of the foot, okay? So about right there looks pretty good. Let's bring this one down. Down, 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 over, 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 over. Good enough. All right, let's see what it looks like. And all I care about is that inside line that I drew in there. That's my stitching line. That's what I want to stitch. Okay, so it looks good. Let's go to set. Let's get rid of the scan behind it. Bigger. Use the hand. Drag the screen so that you can start erasing. Erase. Erase. Let's erase that. All of this. Looks good. Drag. Right there. Back to eraser. Okay, back to the hand. Let's get rid of all of this here. Let's get rid of this. Now you could, if you really wanted to, instead of scanning that, you could trace over the pattern piece and just trace inside and then scan that, and then you don't have to erase any of this. Okay, but since we're doing an exercise in how to use our design center, we're going to erase everything. Hand, eraser. It's fun to erase, I think. Okay, let's go down here. Let's get rid of this line. Okay. Getting there. Don't erase your middle line. We want to get rid of this outside part. All right, whoops. I think I got it. Let's see. Let's bring it back down. Let's put it on 100%. Perfect. All right. I erased the outside line and I erased all the writing on the inside and I got rid of my magnets. Now I would like to rotate this. So what I'm going to do is select it like so. It's now selected. Now I can rotate it. So let's see if I can keep my arm out of the way. I kind of want it straight up and down. There we go. All right, we're going to say okay. Now, we want that to be a stitching line. So, before we told it we didn't want to sew, now we're going to tell it we do want to sew, but I don't want it to be a satin stitch because that's what that is. So let's go into the properties and change it to this running stitch. And just for fun, I'm going to change it to purple so we can see it. Say okay. Now remember, we have to tell it that we want it to do that. It's not going to just do that because we changed it over here. You've got to touch it. Remember, let's make it big so we can really see that line. And then since we made it so big, we've got to scroll up here. I probably could have grabbed the scroll, but there it is. Okay. Bucket. Touch. My line is now purple. Let's make sure the whole thing is purple. Looks like it did. All right. Beautiful. Okay, now we're not going to do a fill in that because I don't want to put any fill in it. I just want it to be stitched. So let's go to next. And I like the running stitch at the length that it is, so I'm going to leave that. Let's hit set. Now it's an embroidery pattern and we're getting out of Design Center. Say okay. And there it is. Okay, so that's one slipper. These aren't the same. You have to flip them, okay? So what you need to do is scoot this guy over a little bit. Go to edit. Duplicate. Bring it over here and flip it. Ta-da! Now you have two. Now, don't put them so close that you can't cut in between them. Okay? Because this is your sewing line. You don't want to butt the two sewing lines up next to each other, or you can't cut them out separately. You'll cut your stitching. Okay? So, that looks pretty good to me. Let's go to embroidery. Perfect. One, then the other. All right. So now we have to set up our fabric in the hoop so that we can turn it. And you might be figuring out what I'm going to do here, but I have to show you. So let's go to our hoop. Okay. Here's my hoop. And because of the way I put them side by side, they wouldn't fit in my smaller hoop. So, you know, it's up to you. However you want to hoop them. If you want to do them one at a time, do them one at a time. I'm just doing this so that I can show you what I'm doing. All right, so what you're going to do, here's our piece of foam. You're going to have your two pieces of fabric for one side and the other side. If they are, this is a batik. Both of these are batik. So it doesn't matter which side is which. They're the same. So if you had fabrics that had a right side and a wrong side, you're going to put your fabrics down first, wrong sides or right sides together, right sides together. Okay. And then you're going to put your piece of foam on top of that. Now, if you spray them and stick them, you may not be able to turn them inside out when we need to do that. So what I suggest you do is run a basting stitch around your design before you sew it out. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in. Lock it down. Okay. Now if I wanted to add a basting stitch right here. Now it has a basting stitch around it. Lower it. Now, because this is not basted down yet, and it's not glued, it's nothing, it's just sitting there, my foot is a little bit low and it will drag, and I'm afraid that as it goes around and stitches the basting stitch, it'll move. So what I'm going to do is go into my settings, embroidery foot height. It is on the default. I'm going to make it higher. Let's put it there and say okay. Now hopefully it doesn't drag when it goes around. Yep, looks pretty good. Okay, I've got my needle put back in, and now I'm going to stitch these out. And I'm just going to kind of guide it. So that it doesn't go anywhere. Now I want to tell you guys what I use for stabilizer when I'm making things that aren't stitch intensive. It is really lightweight, pell-on, iron-on interfacing. It's like 50 cents a yard. It's very cheap. It works really, really good. And it tears. So if you're doing something that you know is going to be stitch intensive or might be pulling, don't use this kind of stuff for stabilizer. All right, let's sew the feet. Done. Okay, now let's cut these out. Okay, all cut out. Okay, now you're probably going to say to me, Mel, how do we turn these inside out? Well, you have to carefully make a slit, and then you'll turn, just not in the whole thing. So let's cut. This is the this is my what I used for my stabilizer, and I'm going to cut it away here so that you guys can see what I'm doing. Doesn't need to be in there. Okay, I'm going to carefully pull up just one layer. And I have two, I can feel it. And what you'll do is you're just going to cut through one layer of fabric carefully. So make a little teeny snip here. So that you're not cutting through both. And I can see my pink fabric under there. So I'm good to go. And make a slit. This is going to be the bottom. That's going to be what is visible inside my slipper. So what I want you to do too, don't forget, go around and clip your curves. Don't clip your seam or you'll be getting out you'll be changing over to sewing sooner than you wanted to fix it. But you want to clip it because otherwise it doesn't turn nicely. You want it to have a nice curve to it. So you're going to clip all of these. Okay. All right, I'm going to use my everything tool that I get from Cheryl Avery in our group. The So It's For Sale, Everything Chat, D-Stash. You know the group. If you don't, you can look on my website, and I actually have a link for Cheryl's stuff, and you can get an everything tool from her. It's really good for pushing out the sole of your slipper. Okay, so I'm just gonna do it like that, and look. So then you will top stitch all around this anyway. So when you put this in your slipper, that's hidden anyway. Nobody's ever gonna see it. Now, if you wanted to, you know, glue that shut, whip stitch it shut, whatever you want to do, but it works really well. That's how I do all my slippers. Okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and finish up and get a slipper made so you can see what it looks like. Okay, that's it. Easy, right? You can do that with anything as long as the pattern pieces fit on your scanning board. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all the links for the stuff that I use for the slippers, for my tools. It's going to be in Mel's toolbox on my website, which is www.sewingwithmel.com. See you soon.